Do you realize the people that have been in this building, like the people they have let walk out of this building? There was a time where they had on staff Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, Matt LaFleur, and Mike McDaniel. It gets better. Raheem Morris was the DB's coach. Bobby Slowick was the linebackers coach. Bobby Slowick is coaching his balls off for CJ Stroud. It is truly wild, the coaches that have worked in that building.
Welcome to the opening bell of the NFL Stock Exchange podcast. I'm Trevor Sikkema. That is Connor Rogers joining you guys at the beginning of the week. And not just the beginning of the week, the beginning of the damn new year. 2024, baby. Kicking it off right with an episode of NFLSC. And today, we're fixing the Washington Commanders. A lot to talk about in this one. I know that we say that every single time, but we've got an even deeper rebuild with this team because new ownership. So we're going to dive into the new investment group, who owns the team, talk about some of the tendencies that we've seen from them because a couple of the people in here, especially the main guy, he owns the 76ers and the New Jersey Devils as well. So we get a little bit of a taste of like, oh, okay, does he have any tendencies? So we can figure out, okay, who might be the next GM, who might be the next head coach, because spoiler alert, I think there's going to be a big regime change. Got a lot of draft picks, a lot of salary cap, a lot of good stuff to get into. Connor, how you doing, my friend? How's your New Year's? Did you do something big for New Year's? What'd you do?
I'm good, man. Not really, actually. You know what I did this New Year's? I played a lot of Mario Kart.
Wow.
Yeah, nothing really that wild.
King.
Yeah, me and Kristen were like, you know what? Because we were invited to only one party, that's just enough. But it was in the city. It's football season. It's really hard to get through Midtown and out of Midtown. And I'm from New York. I love New York as much as anyone. But New Year's is a big hard pass for me for the most part. So we stayed in. We didn't do anything crazy. Which was nice, honestly. There's no reason at this age to have any crazy plans, but Happy New Year to you. I hope it was great. Please tell me you topped me from sitting on the couch and just having beers.
If by topped you mean I went to bed maybe earlier than you did.
Wow, we're done. We're cooked.
My fiance had to work super early the next day.
That's the problem. When you work in football, there's like the holidays in football, they're fun, but they're so congested.
So we went to do stuff on Monday, like even things as simple as she went to go get Starbucks in the morning, right? Well, when she was going into work, and there's no Starbucks open. She's like, "Why is there?" And you forget that it's a national holiday because when you work in football, New Year's Day is not really a national holiday. So no, we played it pretty low key. Fireworks should be illegal to the public. That's my take.
Brother, that was another thing.
That's my New Year's take. If anybody wants to debate that in the comments,
it's just not a I get it on 4th of July, and I've had dogs my whole life, and it's part of the deal. But 4th of July, I totally get it. I love the fireworks. I'll go anywhere to watch them. On New Year's, I just don't get it. I really don't get it.
Here's the thing. I'm great with fireworks. We're getting on a tangent. I promise we're going to actually get into the show. But I'm cool with fireworks on the 4th of July, and I'm also cool with fireworks like for New Year's as like a big show, like somebody putting it on, like an organization or the city or something putting it on.
That's always fine.
To the public, y'all take this way too far. Okay?
Yeah.
We don't need to be blasting off fireworks at 3:30 a.m. on New Year's Day, New Year's morning, whatever it is. Like, even if we didn't have to wake up early, we don't need that. People with dogs don't need that. Thankfully, our dog, I don't know how Gracie is, but thankfully our dog doesn't really give a shit at all about fireworks.
She's actually okay. It's surprising.
It's good.
All my labs before her, though.
But all I'm saying,
berserk. Yeah.
People take it too far, and fireworks should be illegal to the public. That's my take. That's my curmudgeon take. And
a lot of people are not going to like it. There are people that are just firework fiends.
Look,
but listen, I get
don't
it.
Need it.
I really do.
Could do without
some more trouble. Anyway.
Yeah, anyways, let's get into this.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Yeah, Happy New Year to everybody. So Washington Commanders, obviously, this is I think we waited for a good time to do this.
Well, they lost to the Jets, and I promised somebody online that was jokingly tweeting at me, fix the Commanders, and I was like, loser of Jets Commanders gets fixed.
Gets fixed.
I'm a man of my word.
So the Washington Commanders currently sitting at 4-12 now, with one game left in the season. Now, the reason why we wanted to wait on the Commanders is because, one, we didn't know exactly where they were going to draft. Now we have a much better idea. It's basically one of two picks, and we'll talk about that when we get to the mini mock draft at the end of the show. And we wanted to wait because we figures that there's going to be some GM, some head coach changes, but dude, we could just do that. Like, I think that we understand where this is going at this point. This is a big prove-it year for head coach Ron Rivera, for the president of football personnel, Marty Herney, Marty Mayhew, who is the general manager of this team. Like, this was a big make or break year for them. And very clearly, only winning 4 games, having a top 3 pick, the answer was break. Like, it's breaking this regime, new ownership with the Commanders. I think there's going to be a lot of big changes. So that's why we waited to this point. But it also sets things up very nicely for us fixing them now, because it's going to be a lot of fun. Like, the free agency portion is going to be a blast. The mock draft, like we said, at the end of the show is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to give you some GM candidates. We're going to give you some head coach candidates, all that good stuff. So I think this is going to be a fun episode, Connor.
Me too. And you nailed it. There was a reason why you wait on certain teams, right? And for Washington, in all seriousness, good news is they lost that last pivotal game against the Jets. They really tried to make a crazy comeback, and they technically did, but they couldn't hold on to the lead. That was a win that could swing this thing too far one way or the other, that it wouldn't have felt authentic when we're doing the mock draft. Like, if they beat the Jets, instead of talking about them picking at 2, we're talking about them picking 5 or 6.
I was going to say somewhere around 5, right?
Like, that's a really large difference in this class. I want to make that very clear. For a team that probably will be looking for a franchise quarterback. And that's a whole nother conversation we're going to have, because I think Sam Howell did a lot of good things this year. And they are such an interesting franchise, because going into the year, it felt like, and this happens with new ownership a lot in sports. I often reference it on this podcast, especially the fixing ones. I've done it with the Panthers. I cover the Mets only on a podcast. I'm not a beat reporter for the Mets, obviously. That'd be tough to pull off. But covering the Mets and covering the sale from the Mets of Steve Cohen, I witnessed basically like an owner will come in, and rather than just blowing it all up day one, he'll observe what's working, what's not working, what needs to be changed. And Washington was in a scenario where Ron Rivera and upper management and even a lot of the roster had a shot this year to get it right. And I'll say this, Trevor, I think that it's good that they bottomed out, rather than, I never thought this team and this coaching staff was good enough to be, an upper echelon NFC playoff team. I thought they would be an annoyance. And for a lot of this year, they were. They gave a team like the Eagles a tough game and things like that. But if you're going to fully move on in every aspect, bottom out, have a great asset now, you could sell this to who you're hiring and start to build a team. And Washington has needed this kind of change for a really long time.
Yeah. And it's kind of crazy, because I went through this exercise, and when I was thinking about head coaches that might take this job and the situation that they have, maybe getting a new franchise quarterback, maybe all this flexibility in my mind, because I'm 32 years old. Okay. So I was born in 91.
Spider-Man meme.
All right, there we go. Dan Snyder bought this team in 99. So I was 8. So me as a sports fan, all I've basically known when I think about this Washington franchise is Dan Snyder is the owner.
Right.
And the first thing that I wanted to talk about with this team is this new ownership being able to cleanse the reputation that this Washington franchise has, because I've been told that this Washington franchise, for as long as it has existed, one of the most storied franchises in the NFL, in football, has such a rich history, a rabid fan base, a rooted fan base. Like, so many people care about the Washington franchise, now obviously known as the Commanders. And it just, for the majority of my life, I felt like it wasn't like that. I felt like Dan Snyder was a hated owner. I mean, this dude, the fans didn't like this guy. I mean, I read that he sued season ticket holders when, during the Great Recession in 2009, they couldn't pay their season ticket bills because we were in a Great Recession. And he's like, yeah, F you, whatever. You signed the dotted line. And like, I get it. That's business. But like, God damn,
Right.
you're a billionaire, man. Like, and people are going through tough times. I know that rubbed people the wrong way. They were constantly raising prices for tickets, for parking, sometimes when it wasn't warranted. Talked about how FedEx Field has just been falling apart with no upgrades and no renovations. Just the approval rate between the fans and the ownership, it felt like it was at an all-time low, especially over the last 5 years. And that's not even getting into the reports and the accounts that have come out of sexual harassment in the workplace, a toxic environment, bullying, all this kinds of stuff that was just going on in this Washington franchise, let alone the name of the team itself for so long under Dan Snyder, that I always just felt that it's like, yeah, okay, like, all right, Washington might have some salary cap here or might have some draft picks here, but it's Washington, right? Like, you got to work for Dan Snyder. And that's not the case anymore with Josh Harris and this investment group. It's not just Josh Harris, but he's spearheading it. And so with him now taking over with this investment firm as the new owners of this team in 2023, that to me, Connor, is where we have to start with all this, because it is truly a new chapter, not even a new chapter. It's a new book, man. It feels like it's an entirely new book for this team, and that reputation that has been soured for so many years now might be gone in this new ownership and then the new general manager and the new head coach. And I think that's a really, really big deal for Washington moving forward.
It is, because one, it makes coming to work for you much more appealing, knowing that there might be more patience. There might be a work environment that is more football focused. I think that's been a big issue here, is that, guys will go work there and then you're doing pressers and you're answering questions about awful things going on in the news, whether it's about ownership, whether it's about something else in the organization, whether it's about how they treat the fans, whether all the way down to the jokes that what Mike McDaniel said earlier in the year, that he used to have to go pay for his own coffee when he worked there. I mean, just like things that are like unheard of when you're talking about the NFL. It's $1 billion industry. So yeah, I think that it's a big deal. It's a really big deal. Now, I'm not going to lay out, the red carpet here and say that like Harris is done a perfect job with the other franchises he's owned. It took a really, really long time after some really rough years for the Devils to turn things around. And we know the 76ers have had a bit of a roller coaster as well. But I think at the end of the day, what matters if you're a Washington fan is that there's just more stability at the top of the organization and less BS, I would think.
Yeah, I agree. So a little bit of background information on Harris, who I mentioned
he's rich.
Is it? Yeah, that's where we begin. That's where the dating profile starts with this guy. 58 years old, worth $8.1 billion, according to Bloomberg. That is significant. I mean, the man's not even 60 yet, and he's already worth $8.1 billion. Obviously, he's owned multiple sports franchises now. He was part of an investment group that bought the Philadelphia 76ers in 2011. So that's 12 years ago. This dude was 46. He was buying the 76ers. It's wild. Just an incredible amassing of wealth that he had through his, I think, private equity firm is how he got most of his money. And so he bought the 76ers in 2011 and then bought the New Jersey Devils in 2013. And the reason why those dates are key is because I went back and I looked up some GM history with them. We'll get into those in a second. But I did want to read off this quote because you talked about things being more football forward, probably the way to say it.
Right.
Focused, maybe the way to say it. And he had a quote when he bought the team. I think I read this either on Wikipedia or one of the articles I was reading about him. And Harris said this, in sports, when you own a franchise, it's very different than a business. The public holds you personally accountable. There's so much publicity that people expect from you as the managing partners to be accountable for the organization. That's a huge responsibility that keeps me up at night because life is very complicated. Things happen. You do your absolute best. And I spend a lot of time thinking about how do we set things up so we stand for integrity, excellence, inclusion, diversity, all that kinds of stuff when you are managing and moving a team and a franchise forward. And that just is in and of itself, night and day, it feels like, from what Snyder was, certainly as things were very public with him over the last half decade, whatever, however far you want to go back. And so to me, that's just, it means that you're kind of starting off at a good place. And I think that it's also, Washington fans should take solace in the fact that he has taken some big swings with these other franchises, whether it's the general managers that he has hired, the trades that he has empowered them to pull off, the way that he has gone about. Because, I mean, you talk about, hey, it took the Devils a long time, and I think I agree with you. I think that was a lot of trial and error there. But the 76ers, they had the whole, like, trust the process thing, and I'm going to get into the Sam Hinkie hiring in a second, but 76ers, okay, they haven't won a championship. Winning a championship is pretty damn hard, but being in that conversation as a world-class team, world-class caliber organization, that means as an owner, you are doing your job. Now, to get that cherry on top, you need a lot of things. You need the timing, you need the luck, you need a lot of things to kind of work out in your favor. But as long as you were in the conversation, to me, that means that you are handling things correctly as an owner. And I just believe that quote that I had read from him is going to mean a lot for this franchise. And as we kind of dig into some general manager candidates and some head coaching candidates, I wanted to make sure that was a baseline to say that the roots of this thing, I think, are at least in a really good place.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think it gives you hope that as they face the most important hiring cycle they'll make in a really, really long time in terms of, like, I don't know. They've just been so weird with. Do you realize the people that have been in this building, like the people they have let walk out of this building? I forget what year the Commander staff is, but
basically
there's
every good head coach ever.
I mean, there was a time where they had on staff, I kid you not, under Mike Shanahan, Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, Matt LaFleur, and Mike McDaniel. That is, and I understand, like, I get it to an extent that especially if you're an owner, you're not going to know the tight ends coach or the wide receivers coach. Like, this is the next guy, right? Although, if you have a good handle on your organization, I mean, you do should. You do hear things through the cracks.
If you got one guy, if you had just, like, let's say they only had McVay, that to me is like, all right, if you happen to let him out of the building, I get it. Timing is sometimes everything with promotions, getting to be offensive coordinator, getting to be a head coach, all that stuff. Timing definitely goes into things. So if you had one of those guys leave the building and be successful, it's like, we're just, you be happy for him, whatever. They had all four of those guys.
And it gets better.
And they didn't get any of them.
Hold on. It gets better. I had to look because it gets deeper.
Yeah.
Raheem Morris was the DB's coach.
Oh, great.
Bobby Slowick was the linebackers coach. Bobby Slowick is coaching his balls off for CJ Stroud. And
I'm about to mention it. I'm about to mention him as a candidate.
Dude, it is truly wild. The coaches that have not walked in that building, that have worked in that building, which really kind of makes me take a second to tip the cap to Mike Shanahan, because growing up in New York, and a lot of people around the country know this because he's coached a lot of places, but it was always like the Parcells tree. That's always what you're taught. And the 98 Jets have an example of this. They have an insane assistant staffing list. But now you look at the next era, it was Mike Shanahan. That was the next guy. I mean, he literally developed the best offensive minds in football. All of them.
The Shanahan tree is very real. And I think when people hear the Shanahan tree, they only think of Kyle. And his dad was the real roots of that tree. So,
and Chris Forster was also on that staff. He's been the offensive line coach and run game coordinator for the Niners for the last couple of years. Like, it's just,
all right.
It's just crazy.
So let's kind of talk about who they have on staff right now. Okay. Head coach is Ron Rivera. And I will name off these names. You tell me if there's any objection. I think they're cleaning house completely.
Yeah.
You're sitting here at a 4-12 record. You're about to have a top 3 overall pick. And the last 4 years for the Commanders have gone like this. In Rivera's first season, they went 7-9. They made the playoffs at 7-9. Funny enough, they ended up playing. I think that was the year that they played Tampa Bay. So they lose in the wild card round, but they make the playoffs at 7-9. The following season, they expanded the season. It went to 17 regular season games. So they go 7-10. All right, basically the same season, but instead of first in the division, they finished third. Last season, so 2022, they go 8-1. So a little bit better. However, the rest of the division was getting a lot better. They finished fourth in the NFC East, and then this year it's 4-12. So it's basically been mediocre for this team for 3 years. And then this year, like we said at the beginning of the podcast, make or break season, and it's very clearly a break. So I think Rivera is out. And when you look at the guys in the front office, it's Marty Mayhew as the general manager. He's been there since 2011, so he hasn't been there that long, but he's been there for 2 seasons. And then the VP of football and player personnel, is Marty Herney, who was the general manager of the Carolina Panthers. He had 2 stints where he worked with Ron Rivera as a front office member with the Carolina Panthers. He also has been there since 2021. I think all of those guys are gone. I think it's a total cleaning of the house. I don't know. Do you have any objections to that whatsoever?
No, I mean, there's not even a lot to hold your hat to, right? Like if you're, it's not like they just walked away from the draft and they're like, oh, but they passed on Christian Gonzalez for Emmanuel Forbes is malpractice.
Tough.
I mean, there's so many issues team building here, but there's a lot of issues with coaching and talent evaluation. And I think they go hand in hand with both the guy at the top and Ron Rivera, obviously coaching the team, but also the front office as well. This is a wipe the slate clean job, because it makes it more like, who's taking this job if the other guys are just hanging around?
No, it makes
and Harris is no dummy. He knows he's been through this with multiple franchises.
And I think going back to your point, when you brought up the Mets kind of saying, okay, yeah, we're taking over new ownership, but we're giving ourselves time to evaluate what we have, and if there's people who are worth keeping, people who are building around, then okay, we'll be able to do that. I think that Harris, in his investment groups over the last couple of purchases of sports teams for the Devils and for the 76ers, has done that exact thing. He bought the 76ers in 2011. He kind of made a hire where the guy who was the head coach also, like, he didn't retire, but he didn't be head coach anymore. So he went into a front office role, but that wasn't a real hire of a GM. The first GM that he hired was 2 seasons later, and it was Sam Hinkie. And if you go to the Devils, he bought the team in 2013. The first GM that he hired, because he gave the current GM time to kind of prove himself. If he was going to, still be good, he was going to keep him around. Same thing, 2 years later. Now, I don't think that he's going to wait 2 years, because I don't think that timing window is exactly the same. But but I did want to look at the 2 guys that he hired in both of those instances as those first-time general managers. When you go to the 76ers, he hires Sam Hinkie, who was more of this analytical, the whole trust the process. He's the godfather of the trust the process thing with Joel Embiid and building it the right way and basically tanking, losing games intentionally to get better draft picks, to build the team the way that they need to. So it was more of an analytical driven new age approach. But then with the Devils, he ends up hiring Ray Shero, who was the longtime general manager of the Pittsburgh Penguins for many, many years. And so he went in a complete opposite direction with that one. He went with we said before the show, like a football guy, but it's, hockey guy. It's somebody who had been a GM way before, had a ton of experience, was much more of came up through the industry, that kind of a thing. So I don't really have a way that I think that Harris is going to lean, whether he's going to be much more of an analytical guy or if he's going to go after more of a football guy. I don't really have a leaning one way or the other, because he has done both.
He has them both. And I think it'll come down to finding the right pairing here, right? Now here's the question I guess, Trevor, comes down to. If he brings in a front office, do they just get full autonomy over who the coach is, right? That's the thing. And if that's the case, he might look for experience here, because it feels like the volatility of this thing, if you bring up because you could have a football guy and then build out an analytics team, but the football guy is leading who the coaching staff is going to be.
Yeah.
If you go with a young up-and-comer, I respect the swing for the fences, but a lot of times when guys like this come into ownership, they want to set a floor. Like, it's not often a guy comes in and they're like, man, like I gotta swing for the fences, and if this fails miserably in 3 years.
But he kind of did that with Hinkie. And
right, which tells you, like, did he learn?
But
Hinkie thinks weird too.
Hinkie didn't he didn't survive to see the 76ers like that plan fully blossom. You know, I'm sure 76ers fans would tell you like, hey, that had to be done to get them where they needed. But he did take that swing. But I do kind of a little bit, but I do agree with you. I feel like he's going to lean more of as much experience as he can. You know, Ed Dodds, of course, like comes to mind when that's the case. He's been in a lot of these GM interviews and a lot of these conversations. He's been around the league a long time. We brought up Glenn Cook, who's been the assistant general manager for the Cleveland Browns. He's gotten interviews over the last couple of years. He's got a lot of experience in kind of like the football side of things as well, but he's young. I think he's 39, 40 years old. Yep. So he's a young gun. And so I wonder how much he is going to weigh that kind of experience. And it's just going to be very interesting to see which way he goes. That's something that it's very hard for me to predict here on this show as we fix this franchise. And one that I'm just more looking forward to seeing what the answer ends up being.
Right. It's not easy. It's not easy when you're trying to figure out essentially, you know, what is this guy that we've never really gotten to see him operate in the NFL space before looking to do. But when you go through his history, which you did a great job of, it probably tells you that he'll look more for the floor rather than trying to come in and be like this ultimate innovator in a space that could be very intimidating, as we're seeing David Tepper go through an awful reality check of how hard it is in the NFL. Yeah, doesn't mean you got to throw drinks on people, but I mean, my God.
I saw a meme on Twitter that was like, if a billionaire threw a drink at me, this would be me. And it was the SpongeBob guy who's like made out of glass. Like he's just got casts all over his body. He's like, if I'm a billionaire,
I'd have hypothermia immediately. Hypothermia leads to pneumonia.
I'd somehow trip and just like shatter my leg, you know?
Yep. $1 million of settling for my PTSD of having a drink thrown on me.
So
it's crazy.
So head coach candidates, who do you like here? I know there's a lot of like factors that have to play out. The general manager pairing and personality means so much to working with a head coach. And so obviously determining that goes a long, long way. But are there any names? We've gone through this process a couple of times. We've done this for the Chargers, the Patriots, the Panthers. We've talked about, okay, some of these situations, we like some of the old guard. We like maybe a Bill Belichick, a Jim Harbaugh, a Dan Quinn. Some of these we go, okay, Ben Johnson, Bobby Slovic, like guys like that. Do you have a leaning one way or the other, what you maybe think Washington might do, and then also what you would like for them to do, especially given the fact that we're going to have a top 3 pick? Might mean Drake May, might mean Caleb Williams. So what do you think?
Exactly. This is a team to me that is moving into an era now with what they hope will be their franchise quarterback. They are going to select this player with a top 3 pick, maybe top 2, although it's looking top 2 as we sit here today, especially since they close out the season against a Cowboys team that needs a win. So that's really important to keep in mind here. They'll be probably 2 touchdown underdogs. Washington, you're probably looking to pair this coach, to basically staple this coach to that player. Now, yes, you could argue the Panthers just did this and it went horrifically, right? With obviously, the Bryce Young.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that Frank Reich.
No, right.
That doesn't mean the philosophy was wrong.
Exactly.
They just picked the wrong guy.
They picked the wrong guys. They didn't mesh together at all.
And when I say that, I could mean they picked either Frank Reich incorrectly or Bryce Young incorrectly. They picked the wrong guys somehow. So I do think they follow that philosophy because you can argue that there's other places where it's gone just fine, right? I mean, there's a lot of places where it's gone just fine, and so I think that
that will be their mindset, is that we need a head coach that's going to be here for a couple years, that's going to develop this quarterback and get it right, because owners know this now in the sport, especially owners without a franchise quarterback. Having one is a commodity that you can't put a price on it for so many reasons. It's one, obviously, just the face of your franchise. If you have a quarterback in the league, a franchise quarterback in the league, it's what everybody identifies your franchise with. That trickles down to season tickets, to jerseys in the stands, to marketing, to belief and hope in the roster. If you have a quarterback, it makes life easier on everybody else and how to build this thing out. Owners, it's the easiest thing for them to, I don't know, reconcile with or understand, right? A lot of these guys, too, are not football people. They're not. They're billionaire investors. I'm sure some of them have been big fans of the game, but they are usually older men that are entering an industry that is truly wild, the NFL. It's not comparable to any other league. So it's the one thing they can relate to and understand right away. So if you go inside the mind of somebody like that in Harris, you're thinking, okay, I got to get this right. And there's no like zigzagging around it or shortcuts, or I have to take the most direct route, the highest probability. Remember, this is an investor, a guy that plays numbers and money and understands probabilities and percentages and chances. I need the highest percent chance that this works out, whatever kid we take to be the face of this franchise. That's why, Trevor, to me, this is one team. We haven't done this with the other teams. I'm not even looking at the defensive guys. I'm not.
Yeah, I wrote down Mike Macdonald from the Ravens because he's coaching so well.
Sure.
I think he deserves a shout out for how well he has coached both at the pro level and at the college level. But I agree with you. I don't really think that that's going to be realistic. And I think they're going to go much more for those offensive guys. I got 3 guys that I wrote down their names.
Okay.
I've got Ben Johnson and Bobby Slovic. Those are the 2 that we have talked about before. Now, they're young, right? Ben Johnson's 37. Bobby Slovic is 36. So, like, these are young coaches. And that would be a big swing to take on those guys. But they're all the rage, right? You talk about getting a new identity, getting the fans excited. That is getting one of these guys in the building could be a way to do that. If, of course, they go through interviews and you think they're the right guy to obviously lead the team. The other guy that I will bring up is Frank Smith, who is the 42-year-old offense coordinator under Mike McDaniel with the Miami Dolphins. Now, he has been Mike McDaniel's offense coordinator for each of the last 2 seasons, and we haven't talked about him a ton on this show. At least I haven't. So a little bit of background on him. He's been in the NFL since 2010, so he's got a lot of experience, but he doesn't have a ton of like play calling experience beyond the last 2 seasons, so he's still kind of green in that area. But I found this quote from Mike McDaniel that I thought was really interesting about Smith. It says, quote, "He has a thorough understanding of the game, and he is a great teacher," which is really what coaching is all about. He also has a unique ability to anticipate problems before they arise, be that on the field or in administrative type things related to the schedule, questions that will come up with players, coaches, etc. He operates on a daily basis with a passion, positivity, humility, and that is rare, and that sets him apart. I get it. Coaches kind of like talk up their guy, right? I mean, I don't shit talk many of my friends. You know, when I talk about my friends, I pump them up. I tell you the best versions of them. But like, damn, if that quote isn't appealing, the fact that McDaniel is saying he is a great teacher, that lends itself to, hey, next franchise quarterback, this guy's going to be able to really teach them what wins at the position. Because, hey, if there's anybody that understands how well offense is playing right now in the NFL, it's somebody who works on the offensive staff for the Miami Dolphins, right? I mean, like, they're putting up crazy amounts of points all the time. They're getting a ton of Tua Tagovailoa, all that kind of good stuff. They understand what works. They understand the speed element, the mismatches, everything. So I love that experience that he has. I love the part where he says that he is able to predict or see problems before they arise. And he mentioned not just on the field stuff, but within the personnel, within the rest of the coaches, within the rest of the players. That's a CEO type of guy. Like that's a head coach type of a guy too. So, who knows how true all that is? But if it is, man, I'm throwing his name in the hat as well. And I really like the prospect of him getting to be the head coach with a guy like Caleb Williams or Drake May if they end up picking with that pick number 1 or number 2.
It's a fun one.
Well, can't be number 1, number 2. You know what I'm saying?
It's
whoever's getting
yeah. No, I like it. It's a fun one. It's a name we don't talk about a lot. It's definitely one of those ones that if you're on the outside like us, but actually doing the interviews, not like us, you'd love to sit down with him and just know, like, what were you responsible for? You talk to other people. What was he responsible for? What was your day-to-day? What are your philosophies? What do you believe in? Just to be around the guy and get a sense for him of being, the head guy. So that's a fun one. I align with you on both the first 2 names you brought up. And then obviously Frank Smith is a really good call that I hadn't thought of. My third name that I thought of that is a little bit out there, and sure, it's not a favorite.
Okay.
But it's a guy that I'd really like to see get a shot, and that's Todd Monken.
Oh, sure. My man.
Yes. Todd Monken right now, obviously, is the offensive coordinator for the Ravens, and which means he's the offensive coordinator for the soon-to-be 2-time MVP Lamar Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
This Ravens offense, it took a little while. They were, in the early part of the season, it felt like they couldn't find their identity. Then they were able to really lean on the run. Now you watch them. They can play however they want. It's just ridiculous. There's nothing they can't do as a unit. And Lamar Jackson is undoubtedly such a unique player in this league that it's always going to scare you to pull away from a staff and ask them to build something without having their best calling card, right? A unique player like that. But you look at Monken, it's not just what he's done with the Ravens. I mean, it's really, really not. He obviously was carving teams up when he was calling plays for the championship Georgia Bulldogs. Trevor, you were still on the Bucks beat when he was there, as far as I remember. You could speak, very well to him in a second here. I remember when Monken interviewed for the Jets job the same year Adam Gase did. The people I talked to that were a part of that process were blown away. Like, there was some people that walked away from the building that year and they're like, how did we end up with Adam Gase after all these interviews instead of Todd Monken? It's a funny thing to look back on now. I think Monken has the personality that can not only succeed in developing a young quarterback. He's clearly coming from the college level just a couple of years ago. He's also been a college head coach.
Mm-hmm.
So he understands working with young players. He has a really good rapport with younger players. But I also think he has this kind of careless in a good way attitude. Like, I don't care as much what people think about me, that could succeed in Washington.
Yeah,
I think that's kind of a guy they need. Not a guy that's, logging on Twitter and worried about what the writers are writing about him, or they're going to lose year one because they're still rebuilding and not going to be able to handle that heat. It's definitely an outside the box one. It's definitely one that they'd have to miss out on some of their top guys. But if they went with a guy like Todd Monken because they couldn't get their top guy, I would trust him to develop who they're going to draft at quarterback with a top pick.
Well, it's going to be really tough for Monken to be the head coach for Washington when he's the head coach for Tampa next year. But other than that,
love a comeback story.
Other than that, if he wants to cash 2 full-time paychecks, then
winners in Tampa. Winners in Tampa, early part of the season in Washington.
Look, there's nothing in the bylaws that say that a guy can't be the head coach of 2 franchises.
There's nothing stopping him.
Look it up. Look up the bylaws. I've literally said the word bylaw every year since I heard it in the movie Dodgeball, like in 2005.
I was gonna say, I was like, I haven't heard that in a while, and then it hit me.
It's a bylaw. So, all right. Anyways, yeah. Look, I love Todd Monken. I echo everything that you said. Really enjoyed my time covering him as the offensive coordinator when he was the offensive coordinator for the Buccaneers. You mentioned it. He was a no bullshit kind of a coach. He told it like it is. He was a straight shooter. And you're right. I mean, he was somebody who he didn't like throw players under the bus or anything. He wasn't like, saying the truth on everything. But he was somebody who was just like, hey, you know what? Football and managing a football team, there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes. I'll tell you guys what you need to know, but I'll also not tell you what you don't need to know. And I think that that's a really good characteristic of a head coach. And I think that your point to him having really thick skin, and I do believe that he does, can work really well in Washington because that is a major market. And again, I've never lived in that area. I never really understood it. I grew up in Florida. So when people told me about, what a strong fan base and what a crazy market the Washington area was, I was just like, okay. I mean, all I know is that Dan Snyder's a shitty owner to work for. Like, that's about it. But I feel as though when the right guys now get in this building, it's going to rejuvenate that. And I do believe that Monken can be a head coach that can take both the highs and lows of being a head coach in a major market where it's not near maybe as much of a guarantee with some of these guys who are more green. The Slovics, the Ben Johnsons, even the Nolan Smiths, where the Frank Smiths. So I think that that's a really good call out. I absolutely love it. Let's get into the roster. We'll talk about. We're going to get into some of the team needs. We're going to talk about the salary cap because there's a lot of fun salary cap money to play with here. And then we're going to give you a mini mock draft. But before we do that, got to talk about securing your family's financial future with our friends over at Fabric. Fabric by Gerber Life makes it quick, easy, and affordable to protect your family so you can get back to enjoying life. It was designed by parents for parents to help you get high quality, surprisingly affordable term life insurance policies in just less than 10 minutes. They got flexible policies that fit your family's budget, like quality policies, for example, the $1 million in coverage for less than $1 a day. That's something that you could look into with them. Get your personalized quote in just minutes and apply whenever it is convenient for you, all online into your schedule. You go from start, it's covered, less than 10 minutes, no health exam required. You join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to protect their family. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/NFLSE. That is meetfabric.com/NFLSE. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Assurance Company. Not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. So when we look at this roster, team needs. Let's go ahead and talk about them. Top 4, top 5 team needs, and then we'll get into the cap situation, some guys that are free agents coming up, some money that they could have to play with, some targets that they might have. But when you look at this depth chart, when you look at this Washington Commanders team, where's the team needs? Where do you think they need to hit the most?
Offensive line stands out to me, and
Big time.
it's a unit that just needs to be replenished, and they're gonna have to do it. It's really tough to go out at the top of the free agent market and solve your offensive line in a way that's like a super high ceiling, right? Like I think back to when the Dolphins signed Teron Armstead. Those are so few and far between. They're so few and far between that those kind of guys get to the market. And they're just open free agents. And Armstead, even for as great as he was, everybody knew like this is a dude that's going to manage injuries almost every week of this contract. But when he plays, this is a big time ad. So it's hard to say that they're going to be able to do that. But when you look at their day 2 draft capital, that's where I have some faith in them. Because you look at the skill talent here, Trevor, they got wide receivers. Like you know what Terry McLaurin could do. Jahan Dotson is a much better player than what we got to see this year. He, for whatever reason, has been a little handicapped by this offense. So you need to build it up on the offensive line for the new young quarterback under center. And then you look at defense. I mean, this is a team that traded Montez Sweat and Chase Young. Like you got to find replacements for those guys on the edge rusher. They're going to need an edge pass rush because I don't see them just going back into the secondary well right away. They just used a ton of resources both on Emmanuel Forbes and Quan Martin. I don't think this is a team that's like, man, we got to keep drafting corners until they're going to try to develop those guys, the new staff, assuming. And if it doesn't work, they'll get to draft their own. But this is a team that needs a new young pass rush and a lot of pieces on the offensive line as a very, very, simple starting point for a new regime.
I agree. I think that there's 2 tiers, if you will, when it comes to Washington's biggest team needs. I think the 3 are 3 of the biggest positions that you could possibly have for team building. And quarterback's one of them. I think offensive tackle's the other. And the edge rusher's the other.
Right.
I think I would love to hear what people think of Sam Howell right now. Where are you on Sam Howell? Because I am of the opinion that certainly with this team benching him for these last 2 weeks for Jacoby Brissett to take over, it makes me feel like they understand. They are very close to picking potentially Caleb Williams or Drake May. I know some people just say Drake May because they're picking number 2 overall, but I do think it's going to be a debate with what Chicago maybe does at number 1 or who maybe they trade that pick to, who they like better. And the spicy thing is, Caleb Williams is from Washington. He's from the DC area. Like this, Washington, if Washington gets the number 2 overall pick, there could be a world where they trade up to number 1 because they want him. They want the hometown kid. They want the Heisman Trophy winner. They want him to come home, if you will. So I think that there is a strong possibility if they end up with the number 2 overall pick that Caleb Williams ends up being the guy in that franchise, whether they pick number 1 or whether they pick number 2. But I do think that a new quarterback is coming in. And so I think that those 3 needs are the tier 1 needs. And then I would throw linebacker and maybe corner in there as well. We'll get to free agencies in a second. They've got Quan Martin. They have Emmanuel Forbes, but they're probably losing Kendall Fuller. You probably let him walk. And so I think that you'll need a little bit there as well. So go ahead.
No, you nailed it.
Okay. I was just going to jump right into the cap situation.
Yeah, please do.
If you're looking at over the cap, total cap space available for this team, $81.7 million projected for 2024. That is first in the NFL. So a lot of money to play with there. Effective cap space. So this is taking the rookies into account, which they've got some extra draft selections. They've got an extra 2nd-round pick. They've got an extra 3rd-round pick. So that's going to be extra money that you need to sign those guys to the 51, 53-man roster. That money is a projected $64 million. So that's kind of what you really want to go off of. You can't spend, when people go into these exercises and look things up on over the cap or wherever you look it up, they look at that projected cap space and they go, oh, this team's got $81 million to spend. It's like, no, not really, because you have to sign your rookies with that money.
Right.
So that's why the effective cap space number is a much better judge of what you can actually spend in free agency if you would like to. So, and that includes like some of the guys they're bringing back. $64 million is the second most effective cap space in the league. So these are a couple of guys that they could be losing, some unrestricted free agents that they have. And I'm curious, Connor, what you think of some of these guys. The ones that I highlighted, because there's more than just this, but I think these are the ones where you're really kind of making decisions on. Cam Curl is a free agent. Jacoby Brissett is a free agent. Jeremy Reeves, who's a big-time special teams guy for him. Curtis Samuel, Kendall Fuller.
That's a big one.
And Antonio Gibson. Those are kind of the, 6? Those are the 6 that I think are the most debatable, or just like, yeah, you got to bring those dudes back. Because I think you bring back Cam Curl. I don't really think that's too much of a debate. I think he's a really good football player. But the other guys, I think there's a debate. So who were you saying that's a big one for Kendall Fuller?
Yeah, I would think they should make an effort to bring back Fuller.
The only reason why I would say maybe not is because there are some decent corners that are hitting free agency, but
he's one of them, right?
He is.
Although, you know what? I'll say this. I don't love the idea of signing corners and their first year for you will be their age 29 season. Like, that's not good process.
And how long has he been there?
At least 3 years, right?
He's been with them.
That trade?
So he was with Washington from 2016 to 2017. Then he was with the Chiefs from 2018 to 2019.
He's been back with Washington.
And then he's been back with Washington for the last 4 seasons.
Yeah.
He's going to be 29 next month in February. I think they might be like, hey.
Yeah, I might be careful with this one.
And not that they don't need it, but I've got a swap in, swap out solution.
Okay.
I think maybe you let Fuller walk, but you don't just want him to walk for nothing and then just play new guys. Jalen Johnson is somebody for the Bears who I like a lot as a corner. He was given permission to seek a trade, so I feel like they're going to just let him hit the market when the market opens. And that would be kind of like a trade of those players that I'd be okay with. You get somebody new in the building, Fuller gets to go sign with a contender or something like that, and you get Jalen Johnson in there to still mitigate what would be a open spot at corner, and you're filling that with a guy who I think is certainly starting caliber level in this league. So that was my thoughts.
I'm with you all the way. That's getting a lot younger. I mean, he's 25.
I was going to say, he's got to be like 25.
He's 25. 26. So even if his season next year is his age 26 season, I'm with you on that corner swap. And then if one of them make it to the market, which is really, really hard, But if one of them make it to the market, I'm doing everything I can to sign either Brian Burns or Bryce Huff.
Yeah, I have both of them on here.
Like that. Now, here's the thing. This is what makes this exercise tough. Burns could get tagged in theory.
Right,
I don't think Huff warrants, because that number for edges is really, really big.
What's Huff going to get? What's the projected? Is it like 20?
No, I would say closer to 15.
Okay. Because I also have Jonathan Grenard on this list too.
Okay, that's another good one. There's actually some pass rush depth in this free agency class.
That's the conversation that I wanted to have when we went through this free agency exercise. Is I totally agree with you. I think they need offensive line upgrades, but there's way more possibilities at upgrading edge in free agency than there are offensive line. So I'd rather try to spend the money for a Bryce Huff, for a Brian Burns, for a Jonathan Grenard, and then hit offensive line heavy in like round 2 of the draft than try to do the opposite.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I was reading some more free agency stuff. I'm with you all the way. So you're looking at it, Bryce Huff, Josh Uche.
Yep.
You brought Grenard. I mean, even a rotational guy like Andrew Van Ginkel. Like when he's had to play, now he'll play a pivotal role because both Chubb and Jalen Phillips are out. I mean, there's pass rushers in this free agency. They got to go get one. Because they traded both theirs. This kind of though brings me back, and I guess this isn't really the show for it, but like you kind of wish they just paid Montez Sweat.
Well, it looks really bad good now, doesn't it? Because he's been really good. And look, I was skeptical of the trade when it happened.
Yeah,
you know, I when I looked at Montez Sweat, I was like, okay, not a very high pass rush win percentage guy. Like he's been around like 11% at the highest his entire career.
Right,
so
great against the run, but
yeah, like I'm not really paying a run defending edge that much if he can't win as a pass rusher. And he has absolutely won as a pass rusher this year, I think, for both teams. So hindsight, yeah, maybe you hang on to that one, but at least they got a decent pick for him. At least they got
That's true. They did. And they'll have a chance to solve the needs that they prioritize a new regime. So it's an attractive job when you look at the resources.
100% it is. So
but you brought up a great point, like most cap in the league, active cap. They can fill their needs at edge and free agency. They could draft their needs a little bit on the offensive line and at quarterback. It's a lot to like.
So the other player that I would throw out there, because I do think they need an upgraded linebacker. I wouldn't go after Devin White.
No.
I would go after Frankie Louvu. I don't know if the Panthers let him out of the building because he's been damn good for them.
He's been awesome.
But if he hits the market, the baseline dream that I would have for the Commanders for the offseason is you're bringing back Cam Curl, you're bringing back Jeremy Reeves because he's great for you on special teams. You're probably letting Curtis Samuel walk, you're probably letting Kendall Fuller walk, you're probably letting Antonio Gibson walk. I'd sign Jalen Johnson if you could do it. I'd sign Frankie Louvu if you could do it. I'd take a big swing at Brian Burns if you could do it. And if I miss out on Brian Burns, I'm going for like John Grenard, Bryce Huff, Dorrance Armstrong, maybe a couple of these guys.
Even Leonard Floyd.
Right.
So, Leonard Floyd had an awesome year for the Bills.
Something like that. So that would be my cap plan before we head into the draft.
I'm with you.
All right.
Basically, you're going to build up the defense as much as you can because the supply is there.
Yes. Yeah, and you gotta that would to me is maximizing the supply and demand ratio of both the draft and free agency for this team. So
Absolutely.
we're gonna do a mini 3-round mock draft, which for the Commanders that's 5 picks because they got 2 picks in the second round, 2 picks in the third round. So we're gonna get into that in a sec, but got to talk to you about our friends over at Prize Picks, the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Easily the most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers. You pick more, you pick less. It is that easy. It's that simple. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more or you pick less on 2 to 6 players. Stat projections, Watch the winnings roll in. That's all you got to do. PrizePicks even offers a reboot policy so your entries can stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, you got a player who exits the game in the first half, doesn't return for the second. That player is rebooted. PrizePicks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. One of our producers over at PFF threw together a official PFF PrizePicks lineup for the last week of the regular season. We got Mike Evans, more than 62.5 receiving yards. My man. George Pickens, more than 56.5 receiving yards. Feels like it could absolutely happen against Baltimore this weekend. And then Bijan Robinson, more than 66.5 rushing yards against New Orleans. Whew, that one might come down to the wire. But I think that however you want to mix and match it, those are the ones that we're going with. You guys can have a lot of fun doing that too. Go to prizepicks.com/NFLSC. Use the promo code NFLSC for a first deposit match up to $100. That is prizepicks.com/NFLSC. Promo code NFLSC. First deposit match, $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy, folks. It's everybody's favorite time, baby.
Oh, yeah.
Fire up the PFF mock draft.
Put the hamster on the wheel. Get the hamster on the wheel.
Put the hamster
That's how
on
we
the
fire up
wheel.
the mock draft simulator. We won't use solar power.
So everybody who's watching on YouTube, you can see what we're doing. And if you're audio only, I'll tell you what we're doing. We're going to pff.com using the fully unlocked mock draft simulator. You can do that where you can do a mock draft with 3 rounds, 4 rounds, 5 rounds, 6 rounds. Even you sickos can do 7 rounds.
Oh,
if you
we made
want.
it.
You can do that right now over at pff.com. So let's dig into it, right? Commanders currently holding the number 2 overall pick. Now, I will say this margin of strength of schedule tiebreaker is so tight. The Commanders are 4-2, or 4-12, sorry. The Patriots are 4-12, and the Arizona Cardinals are 4-12. The Commanders have a strength of schedule tiebreaker of 0.515. The Patriots, 0.518. So that is just razor thin going into this last week of the season. So we will see if they actually end up with the number 2 overall pick. If they end up with the number 3 overall pick, maybe we could go through like separate scenarios. But let's just do the one where they're picking at number 2. So
I think they're in good shape right now.
they're in good shape either way, for sure. All right, so Caleb Williams goes number 1 in this mock draft, which means Drake May, or you mentioned offensive line. Are you tempted by offensive line?
No, you got to take the quarterback here and try to capitalize on offensive line with your other picks on day 2.
Or do you trade back? No?
You got to take the quarterback. Now, if people want to get into the conversation and go, I like Jaden Daniels or I like Michael Penix or whoever it may be, like that's a different conversation. But I think as we sit here today, it's Drake May.
I agree. I'm thinking about Washington trading back to 5 with the Giants, getting multiple first-round picks, still ending up with Jaden Daniels. And I don't even know if that happens at this point.
I don't know, man. I could see 3 of the quarterbacks go in the top 4 picks.
Could take Michael Penix at 5 after what we saw in the Sugar Bowl.
It wouldn't miss. He didn't miss.
Dude.
Insane. So we'll have that conversation.
Your Penix QB3 stock is at an all-time high today.
I know. I woke up a new man with the silk robe on and the cigar.
Courtesy of Tampa Bay legend.
That's right.
Penix Jr. All right, so we'll go with Drake May here. We will go with Drake May. Now, if they let's say they were picking a 3, okay? Let's say the Patriots were picking a 2 instead. Are you going offensive line or are you going like Jaden Daniels at 3?
I would have a team. I would trade the pick.
Okay.
For a team that wants Marvin Harrison. Because I think nice. a team would pay a really high price to get him, and then I would just take the best left tackle available, most likely. I would, depending how far back you go, I might take Penix, honestly.
Man, let me tell you, we're gonna do the offensive tackle episode on Thursday, and we're going to go through our top 10 offensive tackles that we've done, some of the regrades of these players. I love the top 3, man.
Yeah, we've been texting a little bit.
I think that,
Me too.
And I don't want to spoil too much of it because we'll get into it on Thursday, but I like that strategy of you saying, hey, trade down from number 3, and you can go down to a variety of spots. You don't have to go down, we can only go down 2 spots because if we don't get Joe Alt, we're screwed. Or if we don't get Olu Kashana, we're screwed. I don't think that's the case. I think that you might be able to go anywhere, trade down anywhere within the top 10 and get an offensive tackle that you really love. So I just wanted to shout that out to say I do like that thought process of them maybe first and foremost looking for a trade down if they end up getting number 3. But we'll go with Drake May here. So Drake May at number 2. Now on the clock, second pick of the second round.
We could still get Jaden Daniels and Michael Penix.
Okay, all right. So these guys are not going to be here. We've got to update the board. So we're going to act like these guys are not going to be here.
Well, it doesn't matter. We got our guy anyway. So
hold on, it's crazy. Jaden Daniels' average draft position is 12.5. How did he make it to 34?
I don't know. He got the Laramie Tunsil treatment.
Yeah, oh, man, it's true.
It's like, what are you doing with a gas mask on the night of the draft?
Hell yeah, brother.
God.
Hell yeah.
All right, so what's our offensive line depth looking like here?
Let's look at offensive tackles.
Oh, I'm taking Troy Fontenot.
Yeah, so Troy Fontenot is here. He is somebody who can play offensive tackle for you. He can play interior. Again, not to spoil too much, I like the same for Jordan Morgan. I think you could be an offensive tackle. I think you could be an interior guy.
Yep.
With both of these guys here, yeah, I like Fontenot here. I think that makes a ton of sense. He's a really good offensive lineman.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, Guyton has been a big riser, obviously.
Haven't watched him. I got to watch him before Thursday.
Give him a watch for sure.
Okay.
I mean, getting Fontenot at 34 is it's an absolute heist.
All right.
I think he's a top 20 player.
Hold on. Let's go top 20 player.
Oh, yeah.
Let's look at edge rushers. Okay, so edge rushers, we got Jonah Ellis, we got Jack Sawyer, we got Adiza Isaac. Yeah, I mean...
Complimentary guys, right?
Yeah, we had a run on edge rushers, right? Yeah. Chris Braswell went right before this. JT Tuimoloau ended up going in the first round.
That's okay. We signed Brian Burns and Bryce Huff.
That's what I'm saying. But I just wanted to look at edge rushers.
No, it's a good point.
Say, hey, this is maybe what the scenario might be like. And this is with their first second-round pick. This
right.
isn't with like their second-round pick. So I think we made the right move going with the edge rush strategy in free agency, offensive line strategy here in the draft. So we'll take Fontenot, the offensive tackle from Washington. Pick 42, so only, 9 picks later?
Yep.
Back on the clock because this was the Montez Sweat trade selection from the Chicago Bears. Man, you double up on O-line.
I might take Patrick Paul here, honestly.
Man. Yeah, I like Jordan Morgan more than I like Patrick Paul.
I do too. I was thinking the only problem with the Morgan Fontenot pick is, is there a scenario where 2 years you look at and you're like, damn, we got 2 guards. And they're both
sure.
I don't know yet, and I'll have a better answer for everybody on Thursday. Because Morgan is towards the end of my list. But that's the only thing I think I've had Morgan and Fontenot ranked much higher than the other guys on the board still.
Okay.
I don't know. Morgan's got such good feet. I think he could play tackle. I really do.
I think he can too.
I want to pull up their depth chart again and just kind of look how this would shake out. Because now this is looking like a really good draft for the Commanders right here.
Very. Yeah.
I think I would ask Fontenot to play left tackle. And then I'd probably play Morgan at one of the guard spots. Or the other way around. Depending on what my staff thought.
Yeah.
They might both be playing tackle. They might be playing both tackle spots now that I look at their roster.
Well, they have Wiley, right?
Yeah.
So Wiley's going to play there. So one of them's going to have to play guard.
Which is fine.
Off the bat, which I think is fine, yeah. Does anybody else tempt you here? Because we've got TJ Tampa on the board.
No, because I love TJ Tampa, but...
Keon Coleman's on the board.
They got to develop some corners, and they probably got to sign one in free agency.
Adrian Cooper, I've talked about a linebacker need, but I don't think they need to do that.
Not with this asset, right? I mean...
No. Jonah Ellis, I mean, maybe.
Maybe Jonah Ellis. I really like the idea of hiring one of the 3 guys, like the theme of this show. Hiring one of the 3 guys we said.
Yeah.
And then drafting the quarterback, and then building the offensive line in front of him. Like that's everybody aligned to me.
Yeah, Cosme's playing pretty good at guard at one of the guard spots.
Which is on right guard. So
yeah, and the other 2 could stay on the left side, which they've played over the last couple of years.
Right,
so
and they'll grow together.
Yeah. Didn't they draft who'd they draft? Did they just draft? Man. Didn't they just draft a young dude at center? Am I crazy?
I'm pulling everything up right now. Yeah, they drafted Ricky Stromberg in the third round.
Yes.
I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, right. Who I think
Did
he'd
he
be fine.
hurt?
I think he is hurt.
He has to be hurt. Yeah, he's been on IR. I thought so. That's a shame. But he could be a big piece next year if he comes back all right.
Okay, so you want to go? You want to double up on the offensive line?
Yeah, knee injury in November. Yeah, I would double up on the offensive line.
Yeah, I think that makes the most sense with the board the way that it is. Just getting extra.
I feel great. Like I love this draft.
Yeah, no, we're doing real well here. Okay,
we're not walking away from the table. I'm here all night.
Top of the third round.
Okay.
Oh, Jeremiah Trotter Jr.
That's a need fit for sure. Him and Peyton Wilson.
Or Peyton Wilson.
Yeah, him and Peyton Wilson for sure.
I think Peyton Wilson's probably more likely to be available at 66 just because of the injury history.
I think so too.
And Jeremiah Trotter probably going to get a little bit of a bump because the linebacker class is thin.
Okay. Yeah, I would go with one of those two. Really knock out need, but also get a little bit of the value back here.
Oh, man. Can we get Maris Lafu?
I have to watch him still.
Oh, I like him a lot.
It sounds like you do.
When's our next pick? Damn it, it's a comp pick.
Yeah, it's the end of the round.
Shoot, I don't think we're going to be able to get him.
Is that the Chase Young pick? It is.
Yeah, this is Chase Young pick.
Yeah.
Damn, did you see the game Byron Murphy had?
Dude, he's a beast. Him and Sweat are just...
Bro, he might go top 50. Dude.
Yeah, he's been flying.
He might be.
He's been flying.
That dude can... That dude can get into the backfield, and there's just not a lot of three techs that you could say like, oh yeah, he's definitely got great pass rush ability.
No, he's explosive.
He's been playing really, really well. So Trotter, okay, I like that pick.
Let's take Trotter.
Yeah, I think that'd be really good for them. All right, let's take Trotter here, and then see what we got at 100. Simulating it. All right.
I actually would think running back here.
So we're probably letting Antonio Gibson walk.
Right.
They have Brian Robinson and they have Chris Rodriguez.
They do, and Rodriguez has run really hard when he's gotten a chance.
Right. So,
but they need a guy that can be a legit pass catching threat. Unless they go out and I will say the running back class in free agency has a lot of good third down style running backs.
I know. I feel
like Austin Eckler's market, I don't think is going to be great. If you want to go get somebody like that, Jerick McKinnon, Tony Pollard had a tough year. Like there's guys that can be that change of pace pass catcher for you if you don't want to use a draft pick on one. But I don't know. Donovan Edwards is intriguing to me. Unless we want to just use all our resources on more premium needs, I have no problem with that.
I like the running backs that are here.
Right. It's just a matter if you really want to use a top 100 pick on one.
Right. Like
for a team that...
Yeah.
Curtis Samuel's a free agent, right?
Yes.
I don't hate Jamari Thrash or some kind of explosive slot, unless I'm going to just play Dotson in the slot instead next year and play McLaurin on the outside and look for another perimeter target.
Yeah, that's kind of the way that I would go about it. But who do we have? Let's check wide receiver. Okay, it's Trey Harris. I got to take him out because he's not. He said he's going back to school. I guess it's not like totally official. He could come back out, but no, it's not really a big body.
What about the depth of the edge pass rushing group?
All right, let's take a look.
I mean, now we're looking for like a rotational guy.
So I like a lot of these guys.
Yeah.
Powell Ryland said he's going back, so I got to take him out as well.
What did Gabe Murphy end up doing?
They declared him and his brother.
They did. Wow, because they played in the bowl game.
Yeah, him and his brother did, and they're pretty good. I really like
they
them
are.
around. Murphy is quick as hell, man.
I'm very interested with Gabe Murphy with this pick.
Okay, I'm definitely cool with that. He can't be like your only edge rush addition for them.
No, but if he's your third guy after you sign two in free agency,
perfect. Yes,
with the two big guys they got on the interior and Payne and Allen, like it all kind of starts to add up here.
Yep,
stand up rusher. Yeah.
All right.
This is a good draft. Like it makes you feel really good about the Commanders when you go through this exercise because the fact that they have that premium pick at the top and then can fill out the rest, and they have all these free agency dollars.
Yep.
This team, they could turn this thing around in a hurry if they get it right a head coach.
Look,
they really can.
All we're saying is Josh Harris.
We're available.
Buddy, we are consulting. We are here.
We're not leaving the podcast.
You've done a lot. Yeah, of course not. No. We know that you've done a lot of consulting in the past. You know how valuable that it could be. Hit us up. NFLSC, hit the line. So for everybody who's audio only, can't see the screen that I have in front of me right now, we took Drake May with the number 2 overall pick in the first round. Took Troy Fountain, the left tackle from Washington, at pick number 34 in the second round. And then at pick 42 in the second round, we took offensive tackle Jordan Morgan. One of those two guys probably going to play left guard for you. So new left tackle, new left guard. In the third round, pick 66, we went linebacker Jeremiah Trotter Jr. And in the third round, pick 100, we went with a specialized pass rusher. Another guy to get into the rotation, Gabriel Murphy, a guy who I really like. A lot of good quickness, a lot of good hand usage, just has a knack for getting off blocks, getting into the backfield. I really like Gabriel Murphy. There we go. We did it.
We fixed the Commanders. They will be winning the NFC East next year. Place your preseason tickets while you can.
Yeah, do it.
Not for the games, your betting tickets.
Right, of course. Yeah, right. We would love to hear from you, as we always like to do here with these Fix Your Franchise episodes. Best way to do that, YouTube.com/NFL Stock Exchange. Hit us up in the comments. We are reading and replying to as many as we can. Again, this is one of our favorite exercises to be able to do that because the possibilities are endless, especially with a team with the draft capital the Commanders have, the flexibility with the coaching staff, with the front office. Let us know who you would go for there, where you would spend your free agency dollars. Maybe if we missed a player in free agency who is a free agent for them or just a target that you like, we would love to hear whatever it is. You don't have to give us the full game plan, even if it's just, hey, one note. Hey, I this part of what you guys were talking about, I would have done this. Hit us up in the comments. It's the best way to do that. If you're audio only, you can hit us up on X as well as Instagram at Tampa Bay Trey, at Connor J. Rogers. I teased it before. The second episode this week is going to be offensive tackle rankings for the 2024 NFL Draft. And let me tell you, the class is nice. There's a lot of good guys at the top that we really like, a lot of potential first rounders. And I think it's a pretty deep class as well. There's a lot of names that I'm watching these players and I'm like, man, we got to be talking about these guys a little bit more.
Right.
So we're going to get into not just the guys that we love at the top and the order in which we would take them at the very top, but also some of the depth position, because it's not often that you have a class where you go, yeah, you can wait to get offensive line.
Right.
This might be a class where you could actually get away with doing something like that.
I know that's what's exciting, is that you get to some of the guys that are projected towards the back end of round 1, and you're like, oh, like this guy could maybe start right away or develop into a starter. And obviously, this isn't even a spoiler. You know, all the talk around Alt and Fashanu, and now who's better. And you and I have been texting about a third guy in the mix that we are extremely, extremely high on as well. There's a lot to unpack with this one, and not only will it be exciting to do the top 5 of the tackles, but to talk about the guys on the outside looking in, and then ultimately prepare for when our rankings significantly expand. I know yours have already as well, because like you said, Trev, this class is really deep, and I think the Commanders mock draft was a great teaser of that. I mean, we were sitting there with day 2 picks, and we're like, damn.
Right.
We can really rebuild this offensive line right now with back-to-back O-line picks.
Yep. Dude, I'm excited to get your full thoughts on this offensive tackle class. I'm excited to do the same from everybody after they watch and listen to the episode. Getting in on the comments there as well. The calendar now says 2024, folks, which means we are just 4 months away from the 2024 NFL Draft. We're going to have a ton of different types of coverages for you guys, the mock drafts, the rankings, the mailbags, all that good stuff. I'm very excited about what this calendar year has for the draft season, has for this podcast, has for the interaction that we get to have with you guys. And Thursday is going to be the next chance that we get to do that. I'm Trevor Sikkema. That's Connor Rogers. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening to the NFL Stock Exchange podcast. We will see you on Thursday.